welcome to episode 29 of Yarn to Table. I'm Celeste, and this is a podcast about my knitting life. I've been off for a couple of weeks, so do bear with me if I'm a little bit rusty, and also if this episode goes a little bit long, because there is so much to talk about. I have 3 finished objects to share with you. I have a ton of works in progress, including some brand new cast-ons that you haven't seen before. Little bit of stash enhancement, and I think it's just going to be a really fun episode today. So thank you so much for joining me. If this is your very first time, thanks so much for checking out my podcast. I really hope you find something here that you like, and if you do, that you will hit the subscribe button right down below if you're watching this here on YouTube, so that you can hear more from me. I generally post podcasts every Monday unless I'm taking time off for travel, such as I have for the last couple weeks. If you are a returning viewer and subscriber, thank you so much for supporting the podcast. I love having you in the audience. I love all of your participation and even just knowing that you're out there watching, even if you're not a big commenter. You certainly don't have to be a part of this, so I appreciate you so much. Today I am back on the hot tea because it is actually getting quite cool around here. I'm recording this on September 3rd, and I think it was like on the 1st, it just immediately was cold outside. Like it just knew it was September, which is so great and exciting. We got the last little bit out of our summer, went to the beach. You can see all of that in my Vlogust episode, episode 4. And yeah, so I hope you've been following along with Vlogust if you're interested, and I may talk a little bit more about what's been going on with me in the chit chat segment. That is if we haven't kind of exhausted our time together with all of the knitting we have to get through, so we'll see how that goes. So today I am drinking a really lovely lavender chamomile hot tea, nothing in it. This is actually from Traditional Medicinals, and it's I bought it for the first time about a week or so ago, and it is so incredibly beautiful and tasty. I was really surprised because I basically only know them for like their their medicinal teas. So I drink like their Throat Coat or Gypsy Cold Care. And I only drink those when I'm sick because they don't taste the best. I mean, they're fine, but there's a lot of like licorice root and things like that in them, and it's just not necessarily something I drink if I'm not sick. But this is just a lovely lavender chamomile, not too much lavender, not too little. It really sets off the chamomile perfectly, and I've been loving it. So if you don't know, you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as @CelesteFull. I do keep my Instagram project pages up to date, so a lot of the questions you have, you can find answers to there. You can also find answers in the show notes to every episode, which are in the Ravelry group for Yarn to Table, and there is a link for that below in the doobly-doo. That is also where you're going to find information on knit-alongs, giveaways, things like that. There's an Ask Me Anything thread that I would love for you to participate in, as well as an Introduce Your thread for all you newbies out there. Introduce Yourself thread. I would love for you to leave a comment there. We did have a cowl going on that just ended. This is the Summer Garment Cowl, which I was co-hosting with Anna of the Dunkelgrün podcast. It was all about lightweight summer garments, and we had a ton of fun, and we now have a winner for that. So if you participated in Anna's thread, I don't believe she has announced the winner yet, but I do believe her thread is closed because the last day was August 31st. So make sure you check out her podcast if you entered into her thread as well. And the winner over here on my podcast is Cappuccino136, who is Cheryl from Washington State. So Cheryl knit the Poetry in Motion, which is a beautiful short sleeve lace sweater by Elena Nodell. Cheryl knit it in a lovely dark red color, and it looks so gorgeous. So I hope that you've been enjoying wearing that with your summer outfits, Cheryl, and thank you so much for participating in the cowl. Congratulations. For your prize, you're actually going to have a choice. So I thought it would be fun to give away some of my hand-dyed yarn, but I also thought, because it wasn't super on trend, because it's sock yarn, and I was actually going to give away some Christmas colorways, so like Christmas sock yarn, kind of the opposite of summer garment cowl, which is sort of fun to have that be the prize. But I also knew it might not be everyone's cup of tea, and I don't want you to feel obligated. So here is your choice, Cheryl. You can either have any garment pattern of your choosing on Ravelry, $5 and under, which $5 American dollar, no, you're American too, $5 and under. Sometimes I have to specify. Let me know and I will gift it to you. Or if you would prefer, you can have your choice of one of these two colorways that I dyed up for Christmas. This one is peppermint bark, and this one is Christmas in the 80s. So let me know if you would prefer the yarn or the pattern, and let me know which yarn or which pattern in a message on Ravelry. If it is the yarn, make sure you also send me your full name and mailing address so that I can get that out to you. And congratulations again. Okay, so you may have noticed I'm wearing something you haven't seen before, and some of you out there might be assuming this is something that I knit a while ago, and that's why you haven't seen it on the podcast. But it is in fact a finished object because it's so big and chunky. This is something that I started since the last podcast and completed since then. Although I did show you a tiny bit of it in Vlogust because I was having a lot of trouble with my wrists because of knitting this big chunky yarn, which I'm not used to. So I will insert some photos of this here so that you can get an idea of what the whole thing looks like instead of standing up awkwardly for you. But this is called the armor scarf. It's not really a scarf, it's more of a really big cowl with these big front and back pieces that hang down. You know, like armor. I mean, it's amazing. It is by Alexandra Tavel, who you may know as Two of Wands. She has her own maker business where she designs a lot of knitting and crochet patterns, typically things that are beginner friendly, very fashion forward, and a lot of them with chunky yarn. I love this pattern. I saw it on Ravelry a while ago and I thought it would be perfect for using up some of this super bulky yarn that I had left over from a long time ago. So I had this yarn, this discontinued yarn called Twinkle's, what is it? Twinkle's Hand Knit Soft Chunky. And it was a yarn that was put out by the designer Twinkle, who is Wenlon Chia. And it was wonderful. I had knit in the past, many years ago, some big chunky scarves and even a big chunky hat out of it using Wenlon Chia's patterns. And I had some left over. I, in fact, had panic bought this lovely dark rose color here. I panic bought a skein of that at one point because it was discontinued. And I didn't know what I was doing with it, and it takes up a lot of room. So I really wanted to find something to do with these sort of mismatched bits and bobs of it that I had. I had some light blue, I had some lilac color. So I wasn't going to have enough to do the armor scarf with it, so I thought I would fill in with some Knit Picks Tough Puff, which is basically the same size, single ply yarn, very similar. Now, I'm calling this super bulky. It actually might be called chunky. When you get up to those sizes, I know it's not jumbo, I think jumbo is larger. When you get up to those sizes, it's like, I don't remember the difference. So if you want to know for sure, there are detailed notes on the project page, you can check it out. But for the purposes of just talking about it right now, I'm going to call it super bulky. I'll call it chunky. We'll go with chunky. We're going to call it chunky. I probably could have looked up what it was actually called so that I got this right. You know what? Why don't I just do that? Why don't I just be a professional here for a second? Super bulky. I was right the first time. Okay. All right, we're calling it super bulky. That is what Ravelry has it listed as. Super bulky yarn. Now, Twinkles is called soft chunky, and it is soft. Tough Puff from Knit Picks, not super soft. It's not terrible, but the Twinkle yarn is crazy soft. Crazy soft. And I've actually been wondering, because I know that Wool and the Gang has something they call Big Sexy Wool, and then I think We Are Knitters has something that apparently is exactly the same yarn. And I kind of assumed those were probably really soft as well, like the Twinkle stuff. So I think that's probably what I'm going to buy in the future if I do want more super bulky yarn. I'm not dissatisfied with the Tough Puff. I just would rather have something really soft. It's just more pleasant to work with, more pleasant to wear. But I'm pretty sure those are softer, because I actually today watched a Christy Glass video where she was talking about a different super bulky project, which I'm going to show you in my whips, that she had done, and she had worked with Big Sexy Wool before, and with the We Are Knitters one, I think, and said the Tough Puff was not as soft. So I think those are what I'm going to buy in the future, but Tough Puff was fine. So where I was going with this is that I needed to buy more to have enough for this project. And so I bought some black and some gray. It's actually called silver, I think it's this color here. I bought some of this and some of the black in Tough Puff. And then this sort of lovely gray lavender. It's even rose in some lights. This color is like color changing. It's amazing. This is the Twinkle. This dark rose is the Twinkle. The pink is some leftover of the Twinkle. And then I also had Twinkle in a lavender and a light blue that I didn't end up incorporating into this. I thought I might, but I really just liked keeping the color story a little bit more simple than that. And so what I ended up doing was using mostly the Tough Puff and a lot of this nice gray, but I actually barely dipped into this pink. I have a whole skein of this dark rose color and I barely dipped into it. Just because of that, I liked this look. I liked the look of just having a bit of a pop of color, and mostly the black and the gray. So I don't know how successful I was in terms of using up my super bulky stash. I basically just ended up with like some leftovers of the Tough Puff and then also didn't use all of my Twinkle Soft Chunky. So that's what you get for trying to find a stash busting project, but then also being like really attached to a specific conception of like what it should look like. This is why I'm not one of those knitters that can just do scrappy things and use up all the scraps, because I'm very particular. So what are you gonna do? But I really freaking love the finished project. I actually love this object more than I thought I would. In fact, when I put it on today to take photos for my project page, I loved it more than I did when I tried it on after I finished it. I just love it. It's easier to wear than I thought it would be. So the concept is it has this really huge, see, just this big ol' tube, and then these flaps in the front and in the back. And I did the stripes cool. I did like this in the front, and then I did them slightly different in the back. So the concept is you can sort of hood it, right? And you can also sort of just have it, I like to do it kind of to the side. And it just sits so nice. I just think it is so freaking lovely. I love the photos that I took in it. I just think there's something so wonderful about it. And it's honestly super soft. I took care to kind of use, as you can see, a lot of the Twinkle in this portion that would be near my neck. And I used more of the Tough Puff down here so that I would have the softer yarn near my neck, which, like I said, the Tough Puff isn't terrible. but I'm glad that I did that because it just makes it even cozier and softer and more wonderful. And man, this thing is warm. Like I'm definitely not wearing it through this whole episode. I wanted to wear it for a little while so you guys could see it, but I have to take it off to show you another finished object anyway. So let me just take it off now and I'll show you. Here's the shape. Here's the big tube. And then here it's split and you basically have like this shape, right? In the front and the back. And as you can see, I did the stripes here, and then on this side, I did them like this. So, see the difference there? So I thought that was like a fun little way to mix it up. You actually knit it from the bottom up, so you start by knitting these two pieces. Very simple. You know, it's the kind of pattern you could figure out for yourself, but I like supporting the designer who actually came up with the idea because I think that's a big part of pattern writing, not just telling people how to do it, but having the idea. So, you know, I really think we should support them, even though they're patterns that we could sometimes figure out for ourselves, especially like easy beginner patterns like that. But anyway, so I just love that. And then my next finished object that I have for you, excuse me, I have like little bits of wool in my mouth, great. So I have another finished object. I have two more to show you. Get ready, you guys, because this is something I've been wanting to finish for a long time and I'm pretty freaking happy. Ready? The Marley. I finished this while I was in Nashville, so that was 2 weeks ago? Yeah, about 2 weeks ago. And I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I'm happy to have it off the needles because it was on there for a while and I was in that black hole for a while. But I'm also happy to have it. I have not worn it yet other than for project photos. Because it's been real hot around here, to be honest. But now that it's cold, I'm going to find the opportunity to. I'm a little concerned because I chose neon coral and I'm wondering how I'm going to wear neon coral. I'm not a big bright color person, which you're going to be like, what? You knit with bright colors all the time. I do often knit with bright colors. A lot of times they're for socks because I feel like that doesn't count. A lot of times they're gifts for other people. I like bright colors sometimes. I don't necessarily always like to wear them. So I'm hopeful though because my friend Andy, who hosts the 10,000 Stitches podcast, she recently sort of bought herself a new tiny wardrobe and she bought all these like neutral colors, like my jam. I could wear anything in her wardrobe. And then she bought this like neon coral top and she was like, neon coral is actually really easy to wear. So I was like, oh, please let Andy be right about this because I kind of accidentally knit a giant neon coral brioche scarf shawl. I don't know why I chose this color except that I liked it at the time. So we'll see how wearable it is. And then if I don't wear it at all, I'll probably be a good person and give it to someone, even though I greedily want to hold on to it myself because it's squishy and I love it and it smells good. But I do think my mother-in-law would like it. So let's say if I don't, if it's not a regularly worn piece by her birthday, which is in early March, then it's going to be a birthday present for her. I'm saying that here, and I want you guys to hold me to that because I don't want it to just sit around my house and not be loved, because knits need to be loved. And sometimes as a process knitter, which I am, you can kind of get into a place where you're not really valuing the finished projects because you're not actually making things that you want to wear, you're making things that you want to knit. And the solution to that is gifts. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna put it on for you guys. So, it has this lovely garter stitch edge, big triangle shape. This, I stretched the heck out of it when I blocked it. So when I finished it and it was off the needles, I couldn't have just easily put it around my neck like this. It was not really big enough. It was thick and squishy, not really big enough. When I blocked it, it bloomed, and I stretched it to be like a perfect triangle shape, because when it came off the needles, it's sort of like a wonky triangle. And so I blocked it into more of a perfect triangle. I made sure it got that really nice point there. And you know, the consequence of that is that it is a little thinner than it was when it was on the needles. It's not as thick and as squishy, but it is still a really lovely texture. It's nice and warm. I do think that I prefer, especially for brioche, when they come off the needles closer to the shape that you really want them to be, so that you don't have to block them as aggressively. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. I think it's very beautiful, but I do think that if it had come off the needles as more of a perfect triangle, or if it had been knit to be, you know, whatever shape, if it had come off the needles closer to that shape and had to be blocked less aggressively, it could be a nicer fabric, just like a slightly thicker, nicer fabric. So that's something that I kind of have rolling around in my mind right now, is I think we've all seen patterns where, you know, the exact shape is really organic to what's happening with the increases and decreases. And then, you know, we've seen ones where the blocking has to do a little bit more of the work. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I just think that in order to really preserve the beautiful texture of the brioche, I do think that it would be better in general if you chose patterns where the object off the needles was a similar size and shape to what you were going for once it was blocked, just so that you can have a bit more of that squishiness stay intact. So anyway, that's pretty much all that I have to say about this project, I believe. I really enjoyed knitting on it in the car. You may have seen in the Nashville vlog, which is Vlogmas Part 3, me with my yarn cakes in the cup holders in the car and just knitting along. They fit perfectly. It's so lovely. Obviously my husband was the one driving. But yeah, I think brioche is like, when it's simple brioche like this, it really can feel pretty similar to like stockinette or seed stitch or anything else where you don't really have to think about it that much. You just read your knitting and make it happen. So yeah, I enjoyed this a lot, and I definitely got to that point where I was in the black hole and I really wanted it to be over. But I get that way with any kind of simple stitching where I'm knitting something large and it's just been the same for a while. It's not really brioche specific for me. Tommy of Squirrel Pie Productions recently knit a huge brioche shawl, the Rebel 2 shawl, and she had been completely obsessed with brioche, and she kind of burned herself out on it, and she was like, I think I've had enough for a while. And I totally get that. And while I, toward the end of this, really just wanted it to be finished and was not exactly loving it, it didn't necessarily sour me on brioche. It would just felt like the normal kind of black hole situation. And so I definitely have no issues with like doing, I have a bunch more brioche that I'm planning on doing and I'm not necessarily slowing down on the brioche train anytime soon. So so that's where I'm at with it. Okay, so I have another finished object, and you may have guessed it's going to be the socks. I did these vanilla socks. There are two. Let me just show you one so you can kind of see it. I've been working on these, so I tend to have a vanilla sock as my nice on-the-go social knitting, mindless knitting project for, you know, waiting at the doctor's office, having a drink with friends, that kind of thing. And this was my latest one. This is Fred and George by Nora George Yarns. And it's this really interesting colorway. It's kind of a micro stripe between a more semi-solid mustard color and then a natural base with neon speckles. See, I told you I'm drawn to bright colors. If you haven't been watching before, you are probably convinced now. This yarn kind of grew on me, and I started to like it more as I sort of just felt the like energy of Fred and George, the Weasley twins. If you don't read Harry Potter, that's who Fred and George are. But by the end, I was really kind of wanting to get back into something that is more, I don't want to say comfort zone, but just like more my speed. This was kind of an out there colorway for me. And by the end, I was kind of like done, ready to knit with something else. So this is my standard vanilla sock. This is pretty much right here what I'm gonna do for a vanilla sock. And that is, I cast on 56 stitches. I did a long tail cast on for these. I did another German twisted cast on for another pair, so I will talk more about cast ons when I show you that in whips. But long tail cast on, I do a twisted rib for about 10 rows, which I know is a lot shorter than other people do, but I like the way it looks, and I don't find it to be a real problem with the fit for me. 56 stitches around. I use a 2.25 millimeter Shawl red lace fixed circular 32-inch for magic loop. I do 65 stitches down, fish lips kiss heel, 65 stitches foot, and then I do a standard Kitchener toe. So I like the socks to be sort of perfectly symmetrical in that you can fold them in half and they're about the same length, which is why I do my leg about the same length as the foot. I also find that it's about the length of the leg that I like, at least right now. So that's what that's about. Obviously, I would always do the same length for the foot so that it fit, but right now I'm on a kick of doing the 65 for the leg as well. A little while ago, I had apparently some kind of weird brain fart because I did a couple pair of socks with 75 stitch feet. So that was kind of stupid. I don't really know how that happened. That's a good 10 rows too long. You know, they fit fine. I'm wearing them. It's not a big deal, but it was pretty yarn and I would prefer that they fit me better. I had figured out the length of my foot. I knew it was 65, and then just briefly, probably because I was in Cambridge and I was focused on school, I just sort of like decided I thought it was 75. I don't know. It just happened. But then I put them on the sock blockers. Funnily enough, it wasn't on my feet that I realized. It was on the sock blockers that I realized they were too long, which tells you something about how they still kind of fit okay. Not perfect, but okay. So anyway, that's all my finished objects. Now let's get into works in progress. There's a lot to get to. Let's start with socks, since I was just mentioning them. These are living in my patchwork Gilmore Girls themed bag that I made for myself. And they are Gilmore Girls themed socks. So these are from the Gilmore Girls club. It was a one-time club that Molly of a Homespun House ran. The main color is called the Pop-Tart Dilemma, and the contrast is Coffee, Coffee, Coffee. And these are my socks that I only knit on while I am recording an auditory podcast that I do called Return to Stars Hollow, which is a spoiler-free retrospective podcast about Gilmore Girls. I host it with another girl who I actually have never even met in real life. And we've been doing it for 3 years. And we have about another year to go before we'll be through the series. So if you like Gilmore Girls, you can check that out. It's on iTunes and Stitcher. But anyway, I decided I wanted a Gilmore Girls themed sock that I would only knit on while I've recorded the podcast as kind of a nice treat and incentive for myself, because after 3 years and with a very busy life as a full-time student and working full-time, that podcast has started to feel like a bit more of a job and not as much fun. And so this is something that helps get me in the mood and make it fun. I've only worked on it for, I think, 2 different recordings, and I have this much. And we're actually on break right now, so I'm pretty sure that I had not done the heel the last time I showed you guys. But I apologize if I had. But anyway, we're on break right now, so I haven't knit on this in a while, but we're going to come back soon. Anyway, I did just like the cast on and 2 rows at the top with the contrast, which I thought would be cute. And then I'm doing an entirely ribbed 3x1 leg, and I'm going to continue that on the top of the foot. I did a heel flap, classic like slip stitch heel flap, and turn. And now I'm about to start the gusset, which is my least favorite part of the sock. But when I get through that, I will be a happy camper. And I'm going to use this for the toe as well, because I really like the contrast. I think I think brown and pink look really nice together. And this, of course, has the absolute cutest Sucre Miniatures Progress Keeper of all time, Pop-Tart and Coffee. So incredibly perfect. Like, this is the platonic form of a Gilmore Girls themed knitting project. And honestly, the longer it lasts, the happier I am, because when it's over, I think I'm going to have to dye myself some Gilmore Girls themed yarn and probably even make myself a matching Progress Keeper, just so that I can continue this lovely concept until we finish Return to Stars Hollow, because it's just been so great. Oh, I was going to tell you about the cast on. I did the Twisted German again. So a while ago I tried the Twisted German cast on, and I was like, I don't really get it. It looks nicer, but it's not necessarily stretchier for me. But I decided I would give it another try because everyone raves about it so much, and I figured it's not that much different from the long tail, so I probably will memorize it eventually if I just do it a few more times. And I do like that it looks better. So why am I being such a baby about this? I should just make it happen. So anyway, that's what I've done here. And hopefully I will remember that when I start the second sock. We'll see. Because right now I've been working on like one sock with one cast on and one sock with a different cast on. And so I could easily see my brain just like totally losing track of which was which. But the next pair I start, I'm going to do German cast on again, and then I'll be all on German cast on, and so hopefully I will just remember every time I cast on that it's going to be German twisted cast on and not long tail. So hopefully that will be the case. I have not cast on a new pair of vanilla socks as my on the go. Like I said, the Gilmore Girls is only for when I record Return to Stars Hollow, so I need another pair of socks for on the go. But the thing is, I have this beautiful candy apple yarn from Nora George that I've been saving for fall. I want to do it, but I ordered myself a caramel apple Progress Keeper from Sugar Tots, and it's so cute. And I don't want to start the project until I get the Progress Keeper, because I'm one of those people. Sometimes when you just have the very perfect Progress Keeper and the perfect yarn, the perfect project bag and everything, it's just like, for socks, like sometimes just having those little sets makes it so fun. So I'm waiting until it arrives. It's supposed to arrive, I think, like mid-September. So I'm not going to start those socks until then. And so I actually have a different project that I'm calling my on-the-go sort of simple social knitting plain stockinette, which is a hat. I have it in my Madewell Cities pouch, which I usually keep socks in. And I actually started this last night. I've been wanting to do this hat for myself for a while. So last year I made this, which is the sugarcane hat. There you go. I made this as a Christmas gift for my sister-in-law, and I liked it so much, the product, that I wanted to make a black one for myself, because it would make a perfect everyday hat, and I wasn't wearing an everyday hat that I'd made myself. I had knit a few hats, but none of them were like something I'd wear on an everyday basis. So I thought for this year, I really want to have my standard everyday go-to black hat be something that I've made. The sugarcane hat will be perfect. So the way the sugarcane hat is done is you actually hold a fingering weight yarn and a lace weight mohair together. So it creates this beautiful halo. And so far with Jen's, which I used like a lavender color, and with mine, which is black, I've used the same color for both yarns, but I've also been thinking I would love to do one where you used like maybe like a soft variegated or speckled base with a solid white halo, or even like a white base with a colored halo, I think would be really cool. So anyway, there's like endless possibilities there, but I'm obviously just doing the boring black one because this is more about the product for me. Am I the only one who has so much trouble when you're trying to say like process and product and progress and project and like, oh my God, there's so many similar words like that when you're talking about knitting, and I always say the wrong thing. And English is my first language. All right, here's what I have. So I cast on down here. You actually cast on with just the mohair, and then you start holding them together. And it's really cool because you start with a smaller needle to make it sort of tighter around your head. And then I've just switched to the larger needle when you get up 2 inches. And then it's going to be a little bit slouchy, and it's going to have this nice 4-pointed kind of square top. Yeah, so this is like stockinette for a while now. So this is kind of taking the place of my vanilla sock in terms of my life. Like tomorrow we're going to have dinner at my brother's house. And so I can knit on this while I'm there, like chatting with him and chasing his kids around and stuff, which will be nice. Oh, just noticed I have a drop stitch. Pull that out so I don't miss it next time. Yeah, so the yarn, as you can see, I have my lace weight mohair and my more standard fingering weight. So the fingering is Rowan Finest, which is a wonderful, wonderful merino, cashmere, and alpaca blend. It is honestly like, oh, it's heaven. And then the mohair is also Rowan, and it's Kid K's, which is like the classic mohair. That's the go-to, at least in the US. Now I've got these all caught on the zipper. Jeez. I bought both of these yarns specifically for this project. I actually bought them last year at a local yarn store here in Cincinnati called Hank, a Yarn Cafe. And the colors are, it's really cute because this one is called Spell and this one is called Wicked. So they both have that sort of like a witchy theme to them. So I'm calling the hat Wicked Spell, and I'm actually going to be doing it for Tommy of Squirrel Pie Productions Deep Dark Cal, which is her sort of like Halloween, spooky, deep, dark themed Cal that she just announced. And I was about to start this when she announced it, and I thought, oh my gosh, that'll be perfect for my Wicked Spell hat. So that's the plan, you know, if I actually remember to post it in the thread. But in theory, I'm participating in that Cal. So any opportunity to shout out Tommy or one of my other lovely podcaster friends, I will take. So yeah, this is and it's pretty quickly, even though it's on fairly small needles. Well, at least it was on US 2s at the beginning. I'm now on US 3s. I'm doing magic loop. When I knit Jen's hat, which was the other sugarcane hat, I did not have my Chaogu interchangeables, and so I did not have a circular in a size 2 or even a size 3. I don't think. I think Knit Picks might have only gone down to a 4, which is kind of frustrating. So I knit it on double points, but my double points were not super long because they were really made for socks, so it was not super fun. I did, you know, I loved the pattern, I loved how it turned out, but I knew that the next time I knit it, I would want a circular cable needle, a circular needle for magic loop. And luckily, I didn't even have to buy one specifically for the project, because since then I have acquired my incredible Chaogu interchangeables, which are basically all I ever use. Unless I'm knitting socks, in which case I use Chaogu fixed that I've purchased for socks. But basically I'm just Chaogu red lace all the way. They're incredible. So yeah, there's that. Another whip, you guys. So many whips, so many whips. I mean, I have a lot of whips going right now, but a lot of them are gonna be finished very soon. And a lot of them are new, but a lot of, you know, I also finished a lot of projects since I've seen you guys. So that's sort of what's going on there. I'm surprisingly not overwhelmed by how many whips I have. And I think a big part of that is that some are going to be finished soon. And another big part of that is that I've been on vacation. So I've had a ton of time to knit. I might start to get more overwhelmed when I go back to work on Tuesday. We'll find out. So let's see. More whips to show you. Okay, let me catch you up on the 2 you've already seen and save for the last a sweater knit, a sweater whip, which you've not seen before, which I am basically like halfway or more done with. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So we're gonna save that for last. First, let's catch up on the whips you are familiar with. Oh, right, and also there's a whole nother whip that you haven't seen, which is a shawl, which is, I'll just tell you, the Marled magic. So there's also that. So there's 4 more whips. Just bear with me. It's a lot. There's a lot. It's all really great stuff. So I'm going to kind of zoom through the ones you've already seen just to catch you up on my progress. This is living in my La Bien-Aimée bag, which I love. I love this project. So this has gotten, it got a lot of love, and then it hasn't been worked on a ton lately as I've been working on other things, but I've made a ton of progress. So this progress keeper is where I was last. Obviously it's getting much longer, so the repeats are taking longer. And let's see, where I was, I had done 6 repeats. I've now done almost 10, and there are 13 total before I get to the garter edge. So I'm definitely getting there. The repeats are starting to take a lot longer now because it's getting longer, but I'm definitely getting there. And I'm still absolutely, completely in love with this project. If you have not seen it before, this is the Void by Melanie Berg. I'm doing it in Malabrigo Rios in the colorway Glitter. It's nice worsted weight. This is a beautiful textured, big old crescent shawl. This is like my fall project. I started it at the end of July because at the beginning of August I was starting to be like, it's pre-fall, it's almost fall. It's almost fall. So now that it is fall, I definitely want to get this off the needle so that I can wear it. But it has just been an absolute pleasure and a joy to knit every moment of knitting it. The yarn is wonderful. The pattern is wonderful. I feel like I could knit about 1 million of these. Like, I definitely think I could come back to this at some point because it's just been an absolute pleasure. And I could say a ton more about it, but I don't want to because I have talked about it before. I'll talk about it again. There's a lot of whips to get to. Next whip. Oracle. Living in my fringe supply field bag with all my little cute little penny guys. Oracle, if you have been living under a rock, is a gorgeous brioche and simple lace pie shawl that was released at the beginning of August by Kristen Lair, who has the Yarngasm podcast as well as Full and Vine Yarns, and it's super fun. So I knit on this mostly on the road to and from our Lake Michigan vacation last weekend. So when you last saw it, I have a lot of yarn twisted around things. When you last saw it, I was about halfway through this lace section here, and I am now coming up on the end of the brioche section. So here's the center of the pie. You have some brioche, some lace, some brioche, then there's going to be more lace, more brioche, more lace, and an I-cord bind off. And this is a 3-color shawl. I am now using my 3rd color. So this color in the center, these are all Hedgehog Fibers Skinny Singles. Color in the center is, sorry, I have all my things tied off to get them out of the way. Center is Pine, then this darker is Fly, and then this sort of neon speckly thing here, which I am doing with the Fly in brioche on the back, but the front is this neon speckly, and that is Pesto. So here they are, skeined up, Fly, Pesto, Pine. And I was a little concerned that the Pesto and the Pine might be too similar since they're both on natural bases. But as I'm knitting it, I actually think it's quite nice that they're just subtly different, because I think it's going to give the entire shawl like a nice subtle look, not so stripy, but more just like textures changing and colors kind of subtly changing, which I think I'm going to actually like a lot. I think it's going to be very different than a lot of the other oracles people are doing. I think I'm going to like it a lot. So what can I tell you about the process here? I'm still doing lifelines after every section just in case. There's my dental floss lifeline. And the brioche, brioche in the round, honestly, is like so easy. I learned brioche flat, and brioche in the round is about like, I would say brioche flat is about 4 times harder to learn than brioche in the round. Add to that the fact that this shawl does not involve any increasing or decreasing in brioche. And I think honestly this is the best brioche beginner project I could possibly imagine, because all you do is brioche in the round, no increasing or decreasing. Like, that's the way to go if you're learning it and you want to take a baby step and not like have, you know, try to challenge yourself with everything all at once. Like, I can't possibly think of a better recommendation for your very first brioche. I think it's especially good as your first brioche project if you've already done lace, but even if you haven't done lace, this is also a perfect first lace shawl because the lace is really simple. So I would almost say, like, if you haven't done lace or brioche and you're curious, this is perfect for you. Like, it's gonna be a big project, just take your time with it, but this is the perfect shawl to learn brioche and or lace on. It's really so much fun, and it is the simplest version of brioche and the simplest version of lace that you could possibly hope for. So yeah, it's a big project, so it's intimidating in terms of like hours, but in terms of process, it's very simple, very easy, very intuitive, and a lot of fun. So yeah, I haven't had any hiccups since the ones I told you about from when I first started working on it. And I've been really enjoying it. And my progress keeper is a little piece of Swiss cheese, which I think is pretty appropriate for a lace project. Maybe not quite as elegant as lace could be, but it is, you know, certainly gets the point across. And it's white, so I just think it goes really, really nice. Okay. I will talk more about the Oracle in the future, but I have 2 new whips to get to, so let's talk about them. Let's talk about those. Okay, Marled Magic. This involves a lot of yarn, so it'll be in my ginormous Ghastly's bag that I made for myself. And okay, if you are not aware, Marled Magic is a pattern by Stephen West. He released it, I think last year, as a mystery knit along. So it's actually still the pattern. A lot of times people will compile it into one document. It's actually still in clues, so you still have to get like 4 documents. Which is kind of annoying, but if I mention like I'm on clue this, I'm on clue that, that's why. It's lovely. The whole concept is that you knit this shawl in sort of like these different pieces, and so it's like a very weird construction, which I imagine would be very interesting, particularly if it's a mystery knit along and you don't know what's happening. By the way, I lined this bag with a sheet. So, pretty great, right? Yeah, I'm pretty proud. Okay, I have been wanting to do a Marled Magic because it looked a lot of fun. A lot of podcasters talked about how freaking fun it was. People like Caitlin of Wool Jewel, Molly of A Homespun House, and even though it was insanely outside my comfort zone to do something that's colorful and improvisational and all about like picking your colors as you go, I thought it sounds like a fun process. So again, this is where there's 2 sides of my personality butt heads, because on the one hand, I care way more about the process than the product most of the time. But on the other hand, when it does come to the product, I'm very particular. So sometimes I just have these knits like this one where I just have to let go of the idea that I may not like wearing it and just think, if I do like wearing it, that's a fun bonus. And if I don't, I will give it to someone like my mother, or, you know, I'll just enjoy it being like a beautiful work of art or just a beautiful experience that I had knitting it. So I almost feel like I could do this for Caitlin of Wool Jewel's big scary cowl, which is her like Halloween cowl where you knit something that's scary for you. Because, you know, I'm about to do some steeking for the first time, but steeking not nearly as scary for me as something like the Marled Magic. That's just how I am. So anyway, my concept, I've been wanting to do the Marled Magic. My concept was I was going to use up a bunch of this Harry Potter themed yarn that I have, both from being in Molly's club, and also one time I bought a lot from Nora George because I actually caught an update. And I have a little bit from Little Bean Loves as well. And a lot of the colors seem like they would go well together, so I thought, what if I do an all Harry Potter Marled Magic? Because it's like magic, like it'll be fun. So I've been planning on doing that. That's been sort of on the horizon. I think I mentioned it at some point. And then I found out just recently that Kristen, who designed the Oracle, and Laura of Jinx Yarn and the Dyer's Notebook are they're co-hosting a cal for the Marled Magic. So I went, oh my gosh, I'll cast on for that. It'll be so much fun. We'll all be doing Marled Magic together. And already like a bunch of people that I know are participating in it. I know Tommy of Squirrel Pie Productions is doing it. Obviously Kristen and Laura are doing it. So it's going to be really fun. But yeah, so I cast that on September 1st, which was when the podcast started, or the cal started. I actually was so excited to cast it on that I dreamed about it all the night before. I had these dreams about like which colors I was going to use for which parts, because I finally looked at the pattern, because I finally bought the pattern. And I just kept waking up in the night and being like in my head, like planning it all out and thinking about what I wanted to do. So I was super excited. So I cast that on, and I've been working on it a little bit the past couple days, and I am maybe like halfway through section 2. So let me show you what I've got. Then I'll talk about the yarns that are in what I've got, and well, let me show you what I've got. Then I'll show you the yarns that I'm going to use for the whole thing. No, that's the wrong order. I'm going to show you the yarns I'm going to use for the whole thing, and then I'll show you what I've got and how I'm using yarns in it. Sure, that makes sense. Okay. So let me show you these yarns by dyer. So first, there's Molly of a Homespun House, whose Harry Potter club I'm in. So this is hers, but it wasn't a club colorway. This is repeatable. It's Pygmy Puff, and it's left over from some socks I did. And then this is, that's Nora George. This is Nora George. Okay. This is Molly's from her club. It's Weasley is Our King, left over from some socks I made recently. And then this is a recent colorway from her club called Make-A-Wish Harry. And this is a recent colorway from her club, and it is called Anything Off the Trolley Dears. And then this is the most recent colorway from her club, and it is called You're Going to Suffer, But You're Going to Be Happy About It, which I know sounds weird, but that's a Trelawney reference. It's like Ron is reading the tea leaves and they have conflicting things in them, so he's just being funny. Okay, so that is all the Molly yarn. Then Nora George yarn. This is also called Anything Off the Trolley Dears. So these have like the same name. Well, I think one of them says Anything Off and one says Anything From or something. Anyway, I have it correct on my project page. So that's Nora George. This is probably my favorite one. It's called Deadly Demented. And if you know me, you know this is my jam. So I'm hoping that I will have more of this. I probably want to do some socks out of this at some point. So we'll see. This is also Nora George, and it's called It's called Bill and Fleur Get Married. It would be weird if Fred and George got married. And then this is Nora George. Obviously, you just saw the socks I knit out of it. Fred and George. And then finally, I have a couple colors from Little Bean Loves. This is Amortentia, which was a pair of socks I knit last February for Valentine's Day. That's the Love Potion. This is the only Stellina I have in all of this. I'm not the hugest Stellina person. And then this is Hermione, really lovely tonal mauve. I used this for a beret a little while ago, and this has worked very well for me in this project, and I'll show you why in a minute. And then I also have some mohair because they recommend you work in some mohair, so that's the only non-Harry Potter stuff. This is Kid Silk Haze from Rowan. The colorway is called Grace. And I have these left over from a project I literally did in high school, so that's exciting. And this is a mystery mohair that I've had forever and I have no idea what it is. It's a little thicker, more of a fingering weight, I think. Thicker than the Kid Silk Haze, and it's probably Rowan also. I think I got it at a local yarn store probably around the time I got this, so like 15 years ago, and I'll never know what it is, so what are you gonna do? Okay, so let me show you the project. Oh my gosh. It's so crazy. Look at it. It's this crazy shape. It's like impossible to imagine. How is this going to be a shawl? So this mauvey purple, this is section 1, and it's this incredible eyelet. This was the section that sold me on the design and made me think I might actually want to wear it. When I saw Molly of A Homespun House sort of wearing hers and the lace set like would sit on her shoulder, I just thought it looked so pretty. So then this is section 2, which is going to be about twice as big. It's just going to keep going in this direction. And it's a seed stitch section. So if you don't know, marling, which is the concept of this whole marled magic, is when you have sort of 2 colors together. So sometimes you'll talk about a marled yarn, and that's a yarn that's been spun that way, where you have 1 ply of one color and 1 ply of another color. And then you can also get a marled effect by using 2 different yarns together, right? So Stephen West describes all these different ways of doing the marling, and it's really cool. So first, in case you're distracted by all these ends, you're going to turn these ends into a big braid later, so that's why they're so long, and I just have them pinned out of the way for when I picked up stitches here. They don't really have to be pinned right now, but I just haven't taken them out. So that's what's going on there, in case it's distracting you. So for section 1, he recommends what he calls a steady marl, which is where you hold 1 yarn for the entire section and then you switch out the other yarn in kind of stripes. And so I did that like every 6 rows to get all these nice ends so that I can do that braid. And the one that I held steady through the whole thing is this Hermione. So it's like my only semi-solid, so it worked perfectly for that. And then I striped a lot of colors that worked with it well. So I did like the Dudley Demented, I did some of this Anything Off the Trolley Dears. Let me hold it up with the Hermione so you can get the idea. So there, did some of this. I did some Amortentia here, yeah, and that you can see in these darker places, right? And then I did, I think, Make-A-Wish Harry. I think it was just those 4. Then for section 2, I wanted it to have a nice contrast. And here, instead of a steady marl, he recommends a fading marl, which is where you start with 2, and then you change out 1, and then you change out the other. And then you change out the other, and then you change out the other. So that basically the way I did this was I started with these, and then I swapped. How did I do it? I started with these. Oh yeah. Then I swapped this for this. So I've had this one for 2 with different colors. Then I swapped this one out and I put this in. So now I've had this with the other color and also with this color, right? So it creates this nice long fade. And that's what I'm doing here. That's how far I've gotten. I had the colors that I just showed you. So I started with You're Going to Suffer, but You're Going to Be Happy About It. Held with the Nora George Anything Off the Trolley. And then I swapped out the Nora George Anything Off the Trolley for Molly's Make-A-Wish Harry. And then I swapped out that darker green and I added in this bright blue of Weasley's Our King. And as you can see, it's got this lovely fade, very subtle though, from the darker green to the lighter, brighter blue. And I'm trying to create the fade all the way through to this, as subtly as I can. So I have these 2. When I stop with that, I'm going to add in Bill and Fleur Get Married, so getting toward the pink. And then I'm going to add in, I think, Dudley Demented, and then Pygmy Puff, and then maybe this if I have time, or I might end with Pygmy Puff because this might be a lot. I'm not sure. I could probably get there if I did like this, but I'm not sure. I have to look at how many rows I have and what I want. So, you know, I'm a bit of a planner, as you've probably noticed. So like for each section, I kind of get a plan of what I'm going to do for that section, but I'm letting myself be a little bit spontaneous as I go, figuring out what I like. So yeah, I think it's really cool so far, and I've had a lot of fun doing it. I did make a mistake, which is that on this first section, I was supposed to be changing yarns on the wrong side, but I was changing on the right side, which actually is a real problem because you want all of these lovely ends to create a braid, and you want to create the braid between these two sections. If you created the braid on the other side, it wouldn't look as good because of how the pattern works. This isn't going to be the very bottom of the shawl. There's going to be another section here, whereas this is going to be the bottom of the shawl, so you want the braid to come all the way to the bottom and create a tassel. So I really needed it to be on this side. Obviously that's the kind of thing where you could only fix by ripping out the whole thing, and since this is about fun, I didn't want to do that. But what I did figure out I could do is turn it over and make this that side. And the only thing that that does is, this was live stitches, but instead it's now the cast on edge. So instead of having live stitches, I'm just going to have to pick up stitches, which is not a big deal because it's going to be for a new section anyway. So it doesn't really need to look seamless. The only point to having it be seamless is just that it's easier. So I don't mind picking up those stitches, and it's a quick fix. Yeah, so I just bound off down here instead of leaving the live stitches like I was supposed to. And of course they're down here instead of being up here because I turned the whole thing over. So I thought that was a pretty good fix for my mistake of kind of scanning over a big chunk of text instead of reading it in detail. Okay, let me pack up all these freaking yarns, so many of them, and I can show you the final whip, which is a sweater. And it is something I've not even talked about before on the podcast because it just sort of happened real suddenly. So let me introduce you to what I'm affectionately calling Big Red. This is Big Red. Oh my gosh, isn't it crazy? Okay, I have a lot of explaining to do. I know. Let me take this off. So, this is Tough Puff, which is the Knit Picks super bulky that I bought extra of for the armor shawl. Now, while I was buying extra, I also bought a bunch in red so that I could hit that free shipping minimum. And I thought I would use it to make the Woodland Hoodlet by Tiny Owl Knits as a Halloween costume, a Little Red Riding Hood Halloween costume. But then at some point later, I realized that I had misunderstood the size of the yarn, the weight of the yarn. As I explained earlier, once you get above like Aran weight, I don't have a feel for what size is what, and so I got a little confused. And the Woodland Hoodlet is actually in a size smaller, a size lighter than this. So I had a ton of Tough Puff, and I thought, what should I do with that? Now, back up. We're going to do this Tarantino style. I'm going to give you that part of the story, and then we're going to go and we're going to learn something about my history. We're going to flash back, and it turns out I'm the cop. No, just kidding, but spoiler alert for a 20-year-old movie. That's amazing. But I'm not going to tell you which one, because if I don't, then you'll completely forget this happened and you won't even be spoiled on it. So just go home now, watch every Quentin Tarantino movie you haven't seen yet, you poor thing, and just forget everything that I said, and then enjoy, because they're amazing. Okay, where was I going with this? I'm sorry. I feel like I've been talking for a really long time. Okay. Tarantino it. Reverse backstory. Me. Picture me. Like 14 or 15 years old. Knitting a bunch. And I picked up a book. This book. Now, this has a cover with this sweater that I'm knitting on it, but I took the dust jacket off because I just like books better without dust jackets unless they're particularly beautiful. So sorry about that. But this is Twinkle's Big City Knits. I purchased this at a local bookstore in high school, and I have done some of the, I think I've done some of the accessories out of this, or they might have been out of her Town and Country Knits. I can't remember. But like I said, I had that Twinkle soft chunky yarn because I had done some Twinkle accessories in the past. But what I always wanted to do was this Groovy sweater dress. Groovy sweater, in parentheses, dress. Loved it. It was on the cover, loved it. Now at the time, I was a little intimidated by it because I was not as experienced a knitter, and you know, it's a whole garment. I hadn't done a garment before, and it has some cabling and some bobbling. So I just thought I'll do that at some point. I got older. I got to have a bit of a more womanly body, and you know, it didn't seem like the kind of thing that would be super flattering, so it never was really toward the top of my list. But then we're gonna fast forward now. We're back where we left off, with me and a whole bunch of Tough Puff, being like, crap, what am I gonna do with all this Tough Puff? So the real irony of this is that the whole thing started with me having some Twinkle soft chunky yarn that I thought I needed to get rid of in my stash, and then I ended up with like 10 skeins of Tough Puff that I had to know what to do with. So that is why I should never attempt to do anything stash busting, because I really should just, if I don't want the yarn, I should just give it away, because this is the situation I end up in. But it all worked out because I have all this Tough Puff, and I was like, oh, what am I gonna do with this? And then I remembered that a week before, back in the Quentin Tarantino mobile, 1 week previous, I was watching Christy Glass Knits, and she was at Do You Knit interviewing the owner, whose name I can't remember. But you know, Do You Knit in New Jersey, like very big, popular yarn store. Anyway, she was wearing the Groovy sweater dress in bright neon pink, magenta pink, because she's Christy Glass. And it looked amazing. And you know, obviously, she has the kind of body where she can pull off anything. But she had shortened the sleeves and also dropped down the mock turtleneck. And it kind of made me think, oh, I kind of like that. That's kind of cool. And it also just reminded me of it because I hadn't thought about it in a long time. And, you know, I'm at that point in my life. I'm almost 30. So I'm at that point where I don't always care so much if something's flattering. Like, I'm not necessarily, you know, the point of every outfit is not necessarily to make my body look great. Like, sometimes I just want to wear a big, giant, crazy, red, chunky bauble sweater dress because I want to, y'all. And like, especially for Christmas time, come on, like, this is perfect because it has these baubles. It has these vines up the front and then these big baubles that look like, I mean, if this is not a perfect, like, over-the-top festive Christmas outfit, I don't know what is. So, whew, I started to want to make it. So I was thinking, why don't I, you know, I could shorten the sleeves, I could make it sort of in these certain ways. So like if you can see my arms, I feel like it makes me look less like just a big mass of yarn coming at you. So the idea of shortening the sleeves I felt like was going to be a nice idea. That was sort of the effect that Christy got when the sleeves were shorter. It was like you could see her arms, and so it felt more like, hey, I'm wearing this big crazy thing, but you can tell that I'm a human under here with like a normal sized body. If that makes any sense. So that was rattling around in my brain, and I started to think, I do want to make this someday. What if I make it in black? Because when you wear something that's super crazy or cool or textural, if you do it in black, it just looks like very high fashion. So I thought, yeah, I'll make this one day. I'll do it in black. Well, I had a ton of Tough Puff, and it wasn't black. It was red. But then I started thinking, oh my God, red, Christmas, baubles, plus red is my go-to bright color to wear. Like you've probably noticed this before on the podcast that I knit a fair, I choose red for sweaters and stuff, a fair amount, because I just think it's so classic and I love it. And I like the way I look in it. So I started to imagine the Groovy sweater dress in red, and I went, oh my God, this is amazing. I love this idea. And I became obsessed with it, and the next day I cast it on. And just with a little bit of knitting, I've got up to the armholes. And I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited. So I told you before when I was knitting the armor that, you know, it can be kind of hard on your hands. Just because it's so different than what I'm used to knitting. It's sort of working different muscles, and also I think there's something to be said for just like how dramatically you kind of have to move in order to, like, you're making larger movements when you're dealing with larger needles and larger yarn. So I just think it's a little bit harder on your hands. And so I was super excited, and I got going and I did like the whole skirt portion. And I kind of had to make myself stop, because with chunky yarn and knits up so fast, you want to finish it all in one sitting because you could. But for me, I really had to make myself knit on other things just so that I didn't completely like ruin my wrists. So I've been trying to knit on other things along with this, but it's still coming along real fast. So I'm planning on, I think I want to make the sleeves end just above the elbow. Christie's were a little shorter. In the pattern, they're all the way long. I think I want to make them end just above the elbow, but I'm not certain. I would like to try it on and decide what I like. So I want to knit the sleeves from the top down, but in the pattern, you're supposed to knit the sleeves first from the cuff up, and then when you get to this point where I am right now, you're supposed to join them and do this sort of raglan shaping thing. So essentially, you have these sleeves, you leave the armpit side, so I've bound off here for under the armpit, and you leave the armpit side of the sleeve open so you can sort of seam it later, and you kind of, you bind off, and then you just keep going in the round, joining to the top of the sleeve and then shaping the shoulder from there. I didn't actually, the reason this is on a holder is because I tried it on. You don't actually have to put it on a holder and work the front and back separate. You're actually going to be working them, continuing in the round, joining the sleeve. But I don't have sleeves because I want to knit my sleeves from the top down, as I said. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do a provisional crochet cast on and knit into that instead of knitting into a sleeve, so that I have a way to seamlessly knit down instead of seamlessly joining, so that it'll still be seamless on the outside. There will be a seam in the armpit. It'll be seamless on the outside, like right here, and I can go down while still continuing to construct the shoulder moving up. So that's what I'm going to do. I think that'll work well. Now here's the thing about this, is this project is very poorly written. Very, very, like, so many mistakes in the pattern. So many mistakes. And I kind of feel bad about saying that, you know, but like, I feel like when you buy an entire book and it's been through a publisher, the fact that it hasn't been properly properly edited. What's the term I'm looking for? There's a certain kind of technical editing. The fact that it hasn't been tech edited properly, like at all, like really glaring obvious mistakes. I kind of feel like that's not okay. Like, it's one thing if you're self-publishing on Ravelry and you're kind of doing your own little operation. And it's also one thing if you publish errata later so that people can see where the mistakes were. But the only errata published online that's on Ravelry is like one tiny thing. And there are so many obvious mistakes. Like, so at the beginning, very first row down here, these are supposed to be cables that cross each other like they do at the top, but as you can see, they don't. And that is because in the chart, it doesn't say to cross. It says to, let me just show you this. I don't feel bad about showing you this chart because this chart is wrong. So here you go. All these symbols here and here and here are all for twisted stitches, but none of them are actually twisted stitches. They're cabled stitches. They're freaking cabled stitches, which you can see from the picture. So as you're doing it, you realize you're doing it wrong. So when I got to the middle, I started to go, oh crap, this chart is screwed up because these are not twisted stitches, they're cabled stitches. So I realized that the bottom, because I looked at the picture again and I realized the bottom should have been cabled instead of twisted. So at this point, I realized that the whole chart is wrong and I basically have to knit, I have to double check, look at the chart and look at the lines of the pattern where they've written it and see if they say the same thing, you know, and then it's like that's too much. So it eventually got to the point where I was honestly just knitting from the photograph. The way they have you line up this ribbing for the waist, what they've written in the pattern is completely wrong. And so I kind of had to do that myself. And it's like, honestly, knitting this pattern is like looking at a photo and just knitting from the photo. Like if you don't know how to construct a garment, if you're not prepared to basically design your own garment, trying it on the whole time and making sure it works, then I wouldn't recommend that you knit this. I do think it's really super cute, but honestly, I think it's kind of a travesty that it was sold as part of a book. Like, I spent over $20 on that book, and like it's not just that it has a few mistakes. Like, it has so many mistakes that you're just flying blind knitting your own pattern. Like, it might as well have just been a picture of a dress that they were selling for $20. I don't know, that's an exaggeration because obviously I got all the other patterns as well, but I don't feel like I can trust any of them. And you know, and I think all the other Winlon Chia patterns that I knit were from her other books. So I really think it's just an issue with this book and it not being copy edited right. But that's really frustrating, and I feel like they should have put out an in-depth errata on Ravelry for people who paid good money for this. I really feel like it's irresponsible of the publisher. I don't blame the designer at all, but I think that a publisher printing out an actual book has enough, you know, weight behind them, enough money to invest that they should be able to get, when it's a book of patterns, you should be able to make the patterns actually correct. I just think, like, if individuals publishing to Ravelry can get test knitters and tech editors and make sure everything is right, or at least that the errors are to a minimum, then I don't understand why no one can look at a chart that's meant to be a cable chart and notice that it doesn't have any cabling in it. It just has freaking twisted stitches in it. Like, I don't know. I don't want to rant about this anymore, but I was very disappointed by it. Whatever, the book's probably like out of print now anyway. What I will tell you though is, so I told you that I saw Christy Glass wearing it. So then I started this a while ago, and then today I was looking at Christy Glass's finished object videos, on YouTube, and I saw that she had one for this, so I was like, neat, I'll watch it. And in it, she kind of talks about all of the different mistakes in the pattern and gives a lot of advice that would have been helpful if I'd listened to it at the time, but whatever, I did okay. But yeah, that was interesting as well. But it turned out that she was knitting it in Tough Puff. I sort of assumed she had knit hers in Big Sexy Wool, or in whatever the We Are Knitters one is, because I knew she'd used that before. But it turned out she had knit hers in Tough Puff as well. And she said Tough Puff is not as soft, but I don't mind it. I really like it a lot. So I thought that was interesting. But anyway, here's what I am going to do, because the bottoms need to be cabled across each other and they're not. I'm going to pick out the bind off, which I know is not super fun. Technically what you do really is you pick up stitches and then you cut. And I'm not sure if I know exactly how to do that. So I might just pick out the bind off and kind of pull and cut row by row, because I really just need to go through like a row or two. And then I'm going to knit them back the other way and cross them. How is that going to work right? Because, yeah, they might look slightly off because they'll be going one way and then the stitches will be going the other way. But I do think it'll look better than this. So that's what I'm going to do. Because by the time I realized it was wrong, I didn't want to rip back, but I did want to fix it. And at the time I just thought, I'll just undo the bind off. And now I'm thinking that might be a little bit more, or the cast on edge, not the bind off, the cast on edge. I think that might be a little bit more difficult than I was thinking, and maybe I should have just ripped back the whole thing, but it'll be a learning experience, so why not? I'll figure it out. So yeah, I'm super excited about this. I have been trying it on a lot because I don't trust the pattern, and that's been a nice experience, because I do think I should try on my garments more and make sure that they fit me well. I've kind of learned from past experience that I don't spend enough time making sure the garment fits well, and then I don't enjoy it as much, and I don't want to wear it as much, and that's a real shame. So I'm trying to be a lot better about that. And with the chunky knit that knits up really quickly, it's kind of a nice instant gratification garment where I can try it on and make changes as I go, and I feel like it's creating good habits for me with shaping garments better. Okay, well, goodness, that was a lot. That's all of my whips. I do have an on the horizon thing to show you, actually some pretty exciting Fair Isle swatches, a Fair Isle swatch and a regular swatch. So let me show you that, and then I have a little bit of stash enhancement, and then I am going to skip chit chat just because there's been so much to talk about today. Whoops, sorry. So we'll get back to chit chat next week. So here are some swatches that I blocked yesterday. This is for the Ebba, which is a really cool pullover by Diana Walla. It has Fair Isle in the yoke, and it creates this really neat look where you knit the whole thing, and then you actually steek the holes for the sleeves. So I talked about this before. I got Knit Pixel of the Andes non-superwash sport for it because I wanted to save a little bit of money, and I'm just using black, white, and red. And I'm really excited. So I'm not sure exactly what my gauge is yet because they're still drying a little bit. But I believe that my gauge in stockinette is whoops, there went a pen. I believe my gauge in stockinette is too long, like my row gauge is too long, but my stitch gauge is fine. And I don't really know how you solve that, because you can't just like change the size you're knitting or change the needles you're knitting with. So I think what I'm going to have to do is just, like I said, try it on a lot and make sure I'm doing the shaping in the right places and kind of change and not knitted exactly to the pattern to make sure it's not too long. So that'll be an interesting challenge if that's how that turns out. And then your Fair Isle swatch is meant to be the same gauge as your stockinette swatch. Now don't freak out because these are not the same row and stitches. It's not the same row and stitch count as this one, so I know it looks a lot smaller. It is fewer rows, fewer stitches. But when I measured it pre-blocking, it was definitely a lot tighter than stockinette. Now that it's blocked, it looks like it's loosened up a little, so we'll find out. But it's possible that I'm gonna have to switch my needle size for the Fair Isle part, and I know that that's standard. A lot of people do that. I wish that I could be the kind of knitter who had the same gauge, because I know that's really what you're supposed to like strive for. But I think that if I try to knit looser the whole time, it's just going to become really uneven, and I think I would get a better effect if I just accept that I knit tighter for the Fair Isle and I just bump up my needle size instead of trying to have the same gauge. Like, I think I should maybe just accept that I don't. And maybe I'll aspire to that in the future, and maybe as I become a more experienced Fair Isle knitter, it will loosen up. We'll see. So we'll see how that works, but I'm very excited to do it, and I think the swatch is just absolutely gorgeous. It has another design on the back, which I'm sorry you can't see, but right here, these stripes, that's for the steeking. So you can actually steek your swatch in order to practice steeking if you want to. I may not. I think it depends on whether I decide to use the swatch for something else. Like I might put the swatch around a cute little potted plant or something. I don't know. It's cute. Yeah. So we'll see. It was really nice to do stranded color work again because I quite like it. I think it's really, I do it with both hands, and there's something very addictive about it. Every time that I do it, I think, why don't I do this more? This is really fun. Yeah, so I'm excited to do that sweater. And the cool thing about that sweater is it's bottom up and it has a colorwork yoke. So as you're getting toward the yoke, your anticipation of the colorwork is just building a building, which I think is going to help motivate me to get through all of the plain black stockinette, rather than doing the fun part up front and then working down and like losing interest as you're trying to finish the dang thing. Yeah, so I think that's pretty great. So, stash enhancement. I got a new shipment from Molly's sock club for Harry Potter, and I also picked up some things from some really great local, really great indie dyers at a local yarn store in Nashville. So let me show you those. Molly first. This is old, so you've probably got it by now. This is a Chamber of Secrets themed, Ginny Weasley themed one. Oh my god, it's so beautiful. Look at it. The big skein is called She Spilled Her Secrets to an Invisible Stranger, and the contrast is called The Bite of the Basilisk. And this is on her soft sock merino, which is a 75/25. And then the charm from Sucre Sucre Miniatures is Tom Riddle's diary and a basilisk fang. So isn't that really cool? So yeah, I think these would make lovely socks, but I also think this is the kind of color that I would wear in a shawl or something as well. So yet to be determined what I'm going to do with that. And I don't think I'm going to use any of it in the Marled Magic. It would go well in the Marled Magic, but I think I have plenty of colors, and if I do a shawl, I might need all 100 grams. So if I knew I was going to do socks, I would just throw it in there. You may have noticed the Trelawney yarn, the red and green, I'm definitely making socks with. I said I was going to make Christmas socks. I can use some of it in the Marled Magic and still have enough for socks for myself, because I only use like 50 grams for myself. So that's what that's about. I'm not going to use up too much. And I would do the same with this if I knew I was making socks, but since I might want to make a shawl, I'm going to save it. And then I went to House of Yarn in Nashville, and I got some pretty exciting things. They had some really great indie dyed stuff. I think a lot of it was leftover from SSK. I'm not sure if they carry it all the time, but possibly they do carry some of this stuff all the time, so really don't quote me on that, because I'm not local to Nashville. So this was my first time. This was the absolute coolest local yarn store I've ever been to. And since then, I have heard from other knitters who've been to a lot of local yarn stores that it's one of their favorites. So definitely go if you're ever in Nashville. But I did show you a little bit of it in my Nashville Vlogust, which is Vlogust Part 3. So check that out if you haven't seen it yet. And here's what I got while I was there. From Junk Yarn, I got the colorway Bridget on her smooth sock, which is 75.25. Look at those, really gorgeous. I almost bought a companion yarn for this to do a brioche. I saw Malabrigo tonal that was sort of the color of these speckles that I really loved, but I didn't, because I decided I really just want the freedom to do whatever I want with this. I don't want to commit to something. I do think it would look pretty in that, but I also think it would look really beautiful by itself and show off those speckles. And I think I might want to use it for a sock design is what I've been thinking. So that'll be long off in the future because I'm way too busy to, I haven't even been able to start my shawl design that I've mentioned, and I probably won't for a long time, to be honest. So I have a lot going on, but I really love this. It's really special, and I think it could be nice for something really special like a design. And then I also got actually 4 of these. Yes. Stranded Dye Works Paradise Space, which is an MCN, and or maybe it's just merino cashmere actually. It might just be merino cashmere, don't quote me. And it is in the shiner base. It doesn't matter if it has nylon or not for my purposes because I'm doing a sweater with it, obviously, since I got several skeins. And it's just this gorgeous gray lavender semi-solid. I'm not sure if the inspiration is a black eye, but since it's called shiner and it's sort of a gray purple, I imagine that it's inspired by like a bruised black eye, which sometimes you call a shiner. Which I think is like a nice cheeky name, and it's soft, and I have been in love with this colorway just seeing it online. When I saw it in person, and I knew that I had the opportunity to get several skeins, and I saw that it was in a cashmere base, I knew I wanted it for a sweater. I actually walked in the door at House of Yarns and immediately just like stopped. I couldn't even get through the door because they had all of the Stranded Dye Works there, and then just past that they had all of the junk yarn. And Ryan was like, oh my god, you can't even get in the door. Like, I was standing there for 20 minutes trying to decide what I should get and what I wanted and if I could get it, and pulling up on Ravelry, deciding what sweater I wanted to make so that I could get the right amount of yarn, because I'm not the kind of person who just buys a sweater's quantity for a random sweater someday. I like to know what sweater, because like I said, I'm very particular about my finished objects, and so I don't want to be trying to match yarn to patterns later and have it not be ideally what I would want. So I always pick a particular pattern when I buy more than one skein of something. So yeah, so I was like, yes, a sweater. I imagined a pullover. I was like, yes. So I got on Ravelry and I looked through my favorites and decided what I wanted it to be, and it's going to be a pavement sweater. So yeah. I'm pretty excited about it, and yeah. I don't know when this is going to be happening because I have a lot on the needles right now, and I'm going to start the Ebba as my new sweater. but it's possible I could have 2 sweaters going at once. I don't know. We'll find out how crazy things get in my life when I get back to work. So right now I'm on vacation time and it just feels like anything's possible. And isn't this so nice how they came in this Ziploc plastic bag so that you can just immediately put it into your stash and know that it's safe from water or moths or anything? I think that's such a nice touch. House of Yarn, Nashville, A+, 100 out of 100 would recommend. And they were very, very nice there as well. Very nice people. And actually, when I posted it on Instagram, she followed me on Instagram. I think it was the owner who I talked to when I was there at the register, because she saw the Stranded Dye Works yarn and she was like, oh, isn't this great? Isn't Amy so great? And I was like, yeah, I watch her podcast. And it was the day before the eclipse, so she asked me if I was from town, and I was like, no, I'm here for the eclipse, and we talked about that. And she was like, very nice. So I think that was the owner. But everyone who worked there was nice. My husband had a long conversation with someone else about her rabbits. Because we were there for a while, you guys, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, it was just, I would love to go back. It was an absolutely wonderful local yarn store. And I'm quite spoiled by my local yarn stores here. I have several of them. They're all really good. But this was just another level. It was like another level for sure. Okay. I think that's going to wrap this up, you guys. Thank you for sticking around. If you are still here, I hope you enjoyed all of that incredible yarny goodness. I hope you didn't miss me too much while I was gone. I missed you guys a lot. And it's really good to be back. I hope I didn't ramble too much. Make sure you give this video the thumbs up, as I always say, if you did like it, because that'll help other people find me. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Thank you so much for coming back. And I really appreciate it. All right, I'll see you next time.